It is episode 7 of Bad Combat News, and if you are a UFC fan only, you are officially 1 week into the 2 week layoff and probably starting to feel the burn a little with no card obviously on tonight. If you are real in this game though, and a fan of the sport in general, you would have been treated to another seminal moment at One Championship, which took place just a few hours ago in Singapore. I'm going to get into that particular piece of news last. But before I get into the news I'm most gassed about these days, I firstly just wanted to give a quick shout out to another MMA YouTuber on the rise. So check out Making the Walk MMA. A great format and someone that can be depended on for well-reasoned and well-fleshed out perspectives on MMA in general. The link for his channel will be in the description. So first bit of news to tackle, Usyk and Fury has finally been signed, just a few weeks after Fury came out to claim the fight was never going to happen. Anyone that follows Fury fairly closely knows damn well that he lives in an upside-down, cartoon-type universe, and I felt pretty confident that the fight must be imminently about to be announced as soon as he came out of this shit. What can I say? The man is a pathological liar. Turned out to again be the case. Now, given the money and the stakes that are involved, it's the fight that simply needed to happen, and with no thanks to the lineal champion, and hopefully no further speed bumps in the way of it, with contracts reportedly signed, it should be definitely set to happen. Now, Usyk did show some vulnerabilities against Dubois in his last bout, and is likely to be a sizable underdog against the so-called linear champion, but I like his chances, and personally I'll be rooting for him as the more likeable, more active, and generally less delusional human. Now, speaking of speed bumps, with Fury due to fight Francis Ngannou at the end of this month, I think a touted date of December is highly unrealistic, even if Tyson does mop the floor with him, which we all kind of expect. Ngannou has been pretty vocal in the disrespect shown in the title fight being announced before his bout has taken place, but let's be honest with ourselves, this is not MMA where the term puncher's chance really carries much weight. Despite Fury looking like a disgracefully flabby pudding at the standoff, I expect him to make this look fairly competitive before a late standing TKO, kind of akin to the McGregor Mayweather style of fight we got a few years ago. Alright, in other news, after one of the most drawn out fighter court cases in MMA history, 7 years almost to the day I believe, the final nail has finally been put in the coffin regarding Mark Hunt's lawsuit against Brock Lesnar and the UFC for knowingly allowing Lesnar to fight while clearly juiced to the gills. This has confused quite a few people that can't understand why this was never an open shut case on the side of Hunt, given that the UFC were clearly aware of the juicing. I mean, come on, look at him, we all knew it. So it's left to many scratching their heads and wondering how this did not land favourably on the side of Hunt. Now, for those that don't intricately know the details of how a USADA testing period cycle actually works, in order for a fighter to be quote-unquote cleared to fight by the UFC, they have to be within the testing pool for exactly 6 months before a bout can occur. Obviously irrelevant if they never left the testing pool in the first place. Now, the major misconception about this is that the 6-month period is not actually a legal requirement and is effectively self-imposed by the organization, meaning they can technically choose to do so whenever they please, which they did in the case of Lesnar, who only went through about a month of testing. It's all essentially to give the appearance of a clean sport and to clearly avoid repercussions down the line. That's the reality of what USADA is, a sham, and I suspect that sooner or later this will blow up in their faces when something more permanent happens in there. Hopefully it won't take a fatality for this to happen. Hunt has probably lost a shitload of money on this and will have to face the legal costs, and we know the UFC will be ruthless in pursuing these damages to prevent anyone else having a go. All pretty disgusting, but this was always only going to go one way. Alright, with only 3 weeks out until the lightweight title is back on the line again, once again in Abu Dhabi at UFC 294, Charles Oliveira has come out quite vocally to throw more fuel on the fire regarding Dagestani privilege and how essentially unfair it is that the fight is once again taking place on what is effectively home soil for the defending champion. Now, isolated on its own, I don't really agree with this and believe that the fight taking place at Abu Dhabi this time around is not unfair, The UFC has been keen to expand its influence in this region, has enormous financial ties there, and more importantly, the champion is essentially fighting at the closest available region to himself, given the political situation in and around the Eastern Bloc region at present. Fine. I'm a huge fan of Charles, but I think the time to dig his heels in was when the original bout took place, again in the same situation, and for the same reasons. As the champion, and a popular one at the time, he was in more of a position of strength to insist on a different venue or circumstances, but clearly the financial terms were enticing enough for him to agree. I think the bottom line in all this is a reminder to all fighters who make it to that championship level and manage to hold the strap to ensure that they use what leverage they have to get the circumstances they deem more important. This won't detract from hopefully what will be a more competitive fight this time around, although I personally expect a similar outcome regardless of where this fight was going to take place anyway. Alright, I'm going to keep this one brief because, to be honest, I've rocketed past board and just straight up into beautiful apathy on anything McGregor at this point. The man is still maintaining that a fight with Chandler has to be next and is still being targeted for December. Bro, shut the fuck up. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I don't want to hear anything from McGregor until a date and fight is officially signed, confirmed, and I'd be shocked if this happens at all, let alone in the next 3 to 6 months. This goes double for any potential McGregor-Diaz trilogy that has long been in the offing, and the fact he's spouting about this without a current fight agreement in place with Chandler is beyond embarrassing. It's just not happening, and even if it does, they're both way beyond anything resembling their primes and will ultimately be a waste of everyone's time. Having said that, before anyone jumps on me about this, as someone who would watch literally anyone scrap, and I do mean anyone, I'm a real man, it's just in my nature. Of course I'll watch it, but let's not pretend it's going to be anything that it could have potentially been. I'm not speaking on this bum again until something is officially signed. Now this one is kind of a message for UFC fans out there who may stumble upon this channel, not to be confused with MMA and general combat fans. One Fight Night 17 wrapped up a few hours ago, serving to remind fans of the sport on the whole that the debate between who truly wears the crown remains more open than it has ever been. Most fans of the sport will be unaware of the fact that one directly competes with the UFC, leading in surprising metrics such as viewership, fighter pay, with talent comparisons being the most subjective, but that one actually has the UFC bettered regarding variety and, in my opinion, pageantry. I do have a video in the waiting for a direct comparison between the two organizations, but anyone looking for a snapshot of what I'm suggesting need to look no further than this aforementioned event, which only had one decision on it. Fuck it, you could just look at the build-up and the main event itself for clarification. For a little context here, the current atomweight champion at the time, Angela Lee, only 27 by the way, had recently lost her younger sibling under very tragic circumstances last December, and understandably, while suffering from her own mental health struggles as a result, chose to officially retire from the sport, having not fought since the passing of her younger sibling. This led to the interim fight between Stamp and Ham being elevated to a linear title fight on the night, culminating in a fucking back and forth war between two highly skilled savages, with Stamp Fairtex emerging holding the belt at the end of the night. If you are a fan of the sport that solely looks to the UFC for your MMA fix, I strongly suggest you take the plunge and give one a go, starting with this very card. It was a beautiful combination. The drama that led up to it was just out of this world, and I strongly recommend that you give it a look. It was sensational. Alright, so I'll be back in a couple of days with more news. We've also got the breakdown of Dawson and... who's he fighting again? Oh, I think it's Bobby Green. Dawson and Bobby Green, which is probably going to be coming up on Tuesday. I'll try to fit in some news before then. Again, as always, have a great end to the week, and yeah, take care.